All right, thanks for tuning in this episode of Industrial Sage. It's going to be a really great one. We're going to be talking about marketing automation. So if you're a company that is thinking about making that transition, you don't have anything there and you're saying, I think we want to get into Pardot or Marketo or whatever that is, you really want to watch this episode. Alternatively, if you are a company that's already done this and you have Pardot and Salesforce and you have a huge marketing tech stack that's like this and you're realizing, oh my gosh, I think we went in a little too fast, a little too quick, and we feel like we are completely over our heads, this is a really great episode for you. So for today, I have a very special guest. I have Andrea Tarrell from Sercante, who specializes in this, and she's going to be sharing with us her best practices and tips and tricks and strategies on how to make sure you have a really successful rollout with it if you're evaluating it, or maybe if you've already done that and you're trying to figure that out. So stay tuned, it's gonna be awesome. Again, we're in the beautiful Optimum Production Studios, and I'm Danny Gonzalez, your host, and this is Industrial Sage.
Welcome to Industrial Sage, a free weekly video podcast series all about digital marketing for industrial manufacturers. Hear interviews with your peers and find out how they're solving the same challenges that you might be facing in your own field. Coming to you from the Optimum Production Studio in Atlanta, Georgia, this is Industrial Sage.
All right, welcome back to this awesome episode of Industrial Sage. It's gonna be awesome, you're gonna love it. So I've got Andrea here, and Andrea's got a lot of awesome experience, but before we really jump into this, just let our audience know a little bit about you. What do you got going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm the principal at Sercante. We're a consulting firm that specializes in marketing automation and Salesforce. So helping teams optimize their technology and their processes basically at every step of their lead to revenue flow.
Awesome. No, that sounds great. And it sounds like it's a kind of a very needed thing. So since you're an expert in this area, let's talk about those companies that have used that. I think sometimes there is a little bit of a, I'm guessing here, maybe there might be, I don't know, I might know a few companies or so that said, hey, we need to do this. We need to go from no CRM, we have no, we're sending emails through, I don't know, maybe through Gmail, and we've got a CSV data list. But you know what, gosh, we need to go ahead and make that transition. Let's go Salesforce. Let's go marketing automation. Let's, and then, oh, this is so cool. You can do all these different things, and the tech stack is like this, and then next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I think we went a little overboard, and this is a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But I don't know, does that ever happen? Is that like a thing?
100%. Yeah, right, I see that all the time. Companies have made a huge investment in software. So platforms like Pardot, HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, and they're investing time, energy, manpower in like building programs on these amazing platforms. Yeah. But they're kind of looking around and saying, okay, are we really getting what we were promised, and is this giving us the value that we need?
Right. Yeah.
So kind of connecting the dots between what's happening on the marketing side and what's actually translating into closed-won revenue is. That's a gap that a lot of marketers are seeing.
So it's interesting too. I always find that interesting because, that's really the unique value. One of the unique value propositions that they have is that look, you actually have the tools now that you can tie a lot of those marketing activities from a marketing automation platform, and because it's connected to a CRM, that you can actually look at that and you can run that and say, hey, look, we're doing this activity and we're generating X over here. Obviously, it's not as simple as it sounds. So what are some of those pitfalls that you've seen, and maybe what are some things that some companies can do to try to avoid that?
Yeah, I would say that in theory it's simple, but it isn't easy.
It always is, right?
So I mean, you know the workflow that you want to happen. You want somebody to visit the website, you want them to convert to a lead, you want to nurture that lead, and then hand it off to sales when you're ready. But all of the different technology pieces and all of the different process steps along the way. There's a lot of details to work through.
Sure, but I mean, that whole area, it can be a little, maybe sort of subjective too. And I think that's where some of that, in theory, like you said, you can kind of jump from point here. We want to do this. We want to go, lead. Here we go. And then we're going to nurture, lead score, all that good stuff. But then I think there's maybe a little bit of a challenge of like, oh, we could measure this, and we could do this, and there's always really cool tools that we could,
Yeah, and I think a lot of marketers. They look at the number of leads that are coming in and they're excited. It's going up.
Leads are great.
Yeah, leads are
great.
wonderful.
Right, yeah.
But then if you ask their sales team what they think of them, they're decidedly unimpressed. A lot of companies, when they're first getting started with marketing automation, will go to sales and say, okay, what leads would you like to see?
Yeah.
Almost every sales rep that I've asked that has said, well, give me all of them, and I'll decide like what I'm going to follow up with.
Yeah.
But that's a losing battle.
Yeah.
So I would definitely caution companies against doing that. So being really thoughtful about when a prospect really is ready to buy and when sales needs to get involved. It seems like marketers are owning more of that pre-sales process than they ever have before. And the lines between like what's marketing and what's sales is kind of becoming blurred.
Very blurred, right? And rightfully so. I mean, and every day, I mean, it's getting more and more. I think those lines are getting more blurred, and there's that gray area is there. So I think you mentioned a key point there. You're saying that I think it's interesting when you go and you talk to the sales rep and say, hey, which leads do you want? What we want? We'll just send them all to me. I think that kind of speaks maybe back to a little bit of strategy, persona development, all that thing. And you're saying that, hey, when marketers say, hey, look, we got all these leads, this is great, but I think big key question here is, are they the right leads? Are these people that we're trying to, because you can fill leads all day long. You turn on a PPC campaign, sure, people are clicking on your website, people are doing form fills and all that, but is it like, are these key clients, these are the personas that we're looking to develop and sell to? Yeah,
that's a great point. And I think that's a judgment call that sales is trying to make every day. They have an unlimited number of people they could follow up with. So they're tasked with where am I going to spend my time? And if your leads don't fit their high value profile, they're just not going to pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah, right. No, exactly.
So I think kind of the next frontier is like, how do we get tools into our sales reps' hands so that like they get the right prospect at the right time with the right content?
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that. So maybe, let's speak to that company that is maybe thinking about investing, saying, okay, you know what, we want to go ahead and jump into some marketing automation, and maybe they don't even have a CRM, maybe they do, but they're saying, hey, we want to do some of this. What are a couple steps or a couple key things that they could do on the front end before they go and make that investment to be able to really maximize that and making sure that they're set up for success?
Yeah. I think the first key is that it's not a marketing decision or an IT decision.
Okay.
It has to be the sales, whoever's your VP of sales, sales director, whatever that title is, they have to be 100% bought into the concept of online lead generation and lead nurturing and see the same vision that you do, or it will fall flat every time.
Okay, interesting. That makes sense. You brought in another key point that I kind of forgot about, but IT before, but it's interesting. So making sure that it's set up. Okay, what other things are there that that would help them to make sure they can roll out that successfully?
Yeah. I think there also needs to be a constant dialogue. So having that conversation about like, what are the right leads to pass along, and not taking that first answer of, well, send me all of them as the bottom line.
Right.
But kind of negotiating a shared vision of success, like what do we expect to happen with these marketing efforts? How do we measure it? And then having that conversation over and over and over so that everyone's on the same page about how we're tracking, what's really happening, and you can adjust the strategy as needed.
Yeah, and I think that makes a key thing that I pick out is making sure to have that conversation over and over again. Because sometimes that conversation will change a little bit. I think that it's important because if you're doing it right, you're kind of measuring it, you're looking at things, you're saying, hey, we're measuring this, and we're seeing this over here. You know what? Ooh, we just discovered something we didn't think about. Maybe we need to make an adjustment. And that's okay, but if you're not analyzing that and looking at that and then having those conversations, then you could miss that.
Yeah,
but
that's
then
a great point.
I think the other great point is just communicating that and making sure it's like, hey, let's have the come to Jesus or whatever. Everybody like, look, this is the goal. This is what we're going. Let's not forget. Like, this is what we want to do, because it's so easy to be like, oh wow, all these amazing things. Let's go this way or that way. And just being grounded. And
part of that grounding exercise as a team is sitting down and mapping out, okay, what does lead nurturing look like for my company? So if we had the perfect sales process that we could make fully automated, what would that be? If you don't have an answer to that question, it's really hard to automate a process that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I think that, again, that's like kind of like putting the cart before the horse, or that's right. I said that right?
Cart before the horse.
I get that so confused. Right? But you know the saying, right? You guys know the saying.
Same deal.
So, if I'm hearing it correctly, like having that process mapped out ahead of time before you even saying, hey, let's figure out which platform is going to work well for us. It's, let's look at the sales process, but also the nurturing process, and like, what does that look like, and what are the steps? Because maybe, I guess you maybe work a little backwards from there and say, okay, now let's find the right tools that fit that need
Exactly.
Versus the other way, saying, well, this
Yes.
is what we have. How can we make this work with what
Yes.
we've got?
Yeah. So taking the process that you want to replicate and using technology to support that, not using technology to try to sub in for a process that doesn't exist.
That makes a lot of sense. So bringing in the right people, the decision ahead of time, making sure that you have a clear understanding of the objectives where you want to go, and then really mapping out that process ahead of time. So don't buy the stuff, don't buy the tools and get all that there. It's really, hey, let's figure this out. And then that should influence that purchase.
Yeah, and if it's sort of like a half-baked idea in your head, like, okay, we know we want to call webinar leads and send them 3 email touch points.
Yeah.
Before you roll out a huge automation program for that, try it with a handful of leads and see what happens. Like, make sure that it's the right process to automate before you go through all that legwork.
Before you go whole hog on that. Okay,
Yes.
now that makes sense. What else? Before are there any other tips for those companies that are saying, that they're thinking about making that investment, they haven't done it yet? Because we'll get to those who have and see, there. But
yeah. I guess for companies that are considering making an investment in marketing automation, another piece to consider is, do we have the content to support this? What are we going to be sending people? Do we have white papers, blogs, videos, things that we can get in front of people in an automated way? Because the process, the content, and the technology are kind of the 3 things that come together to make a successful program.
Process, content, and technology. Okay, I like those. Those are great 3 key points. But yeah, good point about the content. Sorry.
If I had to throw one fourth one in there,
throw a fourth one
just mixing it up, data. So do you have clean prospect data? We also can't email people who we don't have email addresses for.
You can't? Oh, okay. All right. Can we spam people?
Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
All right, yeah.
But going through your Salesforce data or whatever CRM you're using, or Excel spreadsheets if you're still in that place. But doing an audit of that, using a tool like Bright Verify, Never Bounce to scrub any bad emails off the list, to start with clean, fresh data when you get going.
That's a great point there. Data, clean data, because you can get in some trouble when you don't do that.
Pretty quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. So we might have had a few experiences with that in the past. So that was great. So we've got, I'm trying to remember to recap this, and the making sure you've got the content, which I think is an overlooked thing a little bit too. It's like, good, let's go ahead and buy this thing. But then you're kind of missing, like, okay, what are we actually going to send? And that, there's a lot. It takes a lot to develop the right content, making sure. There's obviously it's a question of budget. It's a question of resources. A big question of, is this content actually relevant and really helpful? I think also making sure that, is it actually working? Making sure that the content you're going to put in there is measurable to, as much as you can make it. Which obviously not just getting it into a system like this is necessarily going to make it automatically measurable. There's so many little tips and tools and tricks and all kinds of things that you have to do to be able to do that. But
and another thing to think through is, like, what is the content that your sales reps are actually asking for? Sometimes as marketers we can get carried away with all the content we could create. So like blogs and explainer videos and things that are more like ready for the top of the funnel.
Right.
Whereas sales might be looking for something that's a little more geared at, okay, what do I need to get in front of this prospect that I want to close?
Right. Yeah. So something a little bit more, doesn't have to be as flashy, but maybe something a little bit more, more informational.
More action-oriented,
No, that's a great point. So, honestly, really, at the end of the day, we say this a lot here on IndustrialSage. A lot of it just goes back to strategy. Instead of just saying, look, let's put together a plan. Let's figure all this out. What is this going to look like? Let's pretend that we don't have this, and let's kind of, like you said, build out that process. Let's talk to the right people that need to be involved in it, certainly IT, sales, and let's look at let's figure out, like, hey, do we need to really attract? Like, what kind of leads? What do they look like? Persona, verticals, all that good stuff. Because all that's going to flow backwards. We can work backwards from there, right? Content. Make sure you've got and the data. Make sure you've got that you've got that you do have data that you can use. You can have access to it. That's clean. All that good stuff. Okay.
100% agree.
So, all right, let's jump to what about those companies that might have already done this and they're like, we went from literally, I know a few companies who may or may not have done this, but so we've got a website like from the 80s, and we don't have a CRM. We've got a bunch of Excel spreadsheets where we get a CSV, and that's what everyone's saying. But yeah, gosh darn it, we need a CRM and we need marketing automation. So we're getting Salesforce and we're getting Pardot and we're going now. Boom, let's go. And then we need all these other tools and all these other things. And then they're like, oh man, there's a lot here. This isn't working as much as I thought. What do you recommend there in that situation?
Definitely recommend the crawl, walk, run approach. So after you implement a big platform like Salesforce or a marketing automation tool, like set quarterly goals of what you can, like bites you can actually chew.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, a year later, you look at your contract and you say, okay, like what have we really done with this thing? We've paid $12,000+, and have we really seen the value?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So otherwise, you might be doing the opposite when you're running and then you're walking and then you're crawling because you're just like crushed under like, oh my gosh, this thing's so busy.
Yeah. And a trap I see a lot of companies falling into is using their marketing automation platform like a glorified email marketing tool. So just using it to send like ongoing list emails, which it's great at, but there's so much more that it can do.
That's what MailChimp's for.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, not to throw. MailChimp, I love MailChimp. They're great. Actually, they've got quite a bit of automation tools and stuff in there. But anyways, constant contact, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, you don't need to pay a marketing automation price tag for like MailChimp level functionality.
Exactly. Again, not downing MailChimp. We love MailChimp.
We love MailChimp.
It's just different tools, right?
Yeah.
So, okay.
So at least on a quarterly basis, I would say reviewing the functionality that you're not using and kind of just doing a high-level state of the account audit can be useful. Especially with new features coming out and integrations improving, new connectors being released. It's important to stay on top of that stuff.
No, that totally makes sense. What about the company that, so, those are really great tips here, but what about the ones that are just realizing like, oh man, we are way over our head, like in this, maybe they're 8 months into it, or like you said, the renewal's coming up or something, and you're just like, geez, like, what steps do you think at that point to say, hey, look, we got to figure this out because we're just, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely considering a partner and being realistic about what your internal capacity is important.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
a good point. Yeah.
Another thing to consider is how can you move the ball? I'm going to use two metaphors in the same sentence.
Let's go for it.
But how do you move the ball without trying to like boil the ocean? Like how can you make progress without like feeling like you have to tackle everything in the world that could possibly be automated?
Yeah.
One way that I've seen people successfully do this is by running like pilot programs. So picking like 3 to 5 sales reps who, not necessarily your top dollar sales reps, but the ones that are the hungriest, the ones that actually care to follow up on leads that marketing has generated. So work with them to build a little pilot program, design a follow-up process that they can test and give you feedback on, and use that to kind of springboard what you do next.
No, that's such a great tip. I mean, that's, and I think that's the beauty of the product, because that's really what that's really what it's built for, is to be able to help. And once it's actually functioning and working, it's amazing. The sales teams, they're all excited because they're actually providing really qualified leads and really helping them on their job. It's essentially, you can kind of like take your Salesforce a little bit more and flip it all to a little bit more, an inside sales type approach. And it's exciting once that is there. So yeah, I like that.
The way you put it, helping sales do their job, that's what it's all about. I also think it's worth sitting down with your reps and just watching them do their thing for a while. Like, see how they use the system, sit in on their pipeline meetings, ride along with them to a sales call, and just see what their day-to-day workflow looks like. I can guarantee you will see like 5 to 10 opportunities for automation right out of the gate.
That's a really great point. Actually, there was a couple episodes we had. They were talking about the same thing, saying, "Look, they spend. I think maybe it was once a week or once a month, but they would do that. Spend time with the sales team just to get an understanding. Just get in their shoes and just be that fly on the wall and say, how could I help make your job a little easier? Let me think of it. You're doing this thing over and over and over and over again. Maybe there's a template or something we could quickly make that you could use when you respond back to people, or maybe there's some sort of trigger that we could use. All kinds of great things like that.
And what parts of the system do they get excited about? Like, are the lead revisit alerts? Is that Is that making their day, or
Yeah.
what functionality can you roll out to help them get excited about what you're trying to do?
Yeah, that's a really great tip. What about, I mean, ask this other question, do you sense sometimes that there is, I mean, data is awesome, and you've got all the analytics and all kinds of stuff. At what point do you feel that there is too much data, or too much analytics, too much information? I mean,
Absolutely.
Can that be a challenge? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as marketers, there's all kinds of data points we can look at. I mean, like number of website visits, number of visitors, time on site, bounce rate, conversion rate. All of those numbers don't mean a whole lot to people outside of the marketing department.
Sure, yeah.
We need that data to improve what we're doing on the marketing side. But when it comes to like reporting that out and sharing that information overload is a good way to have everybody tune you out.
That's true. That's a really good point. And to the point, kind of circle back that conversation we had before, making sure to communicate those the results and the things that are going on there. Do you have a list, like maybe a top whatever, as far as metrics? Like, here are the ones that you should really be caring about and looking at, and these are the ones that we should be focusing on?
Yeah. I think the ultimate goal is to get to the point where you can say, marketing contributed this much to pipeline. This is a $sign of number of opportunities we sourced and a $sign of number of opportunities we influenced. That's the perfect place to get to.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you can't quite get there, if your data is not in a place where you have that information, reporting on lead metrics is kind of the next best thing.
Yeah.
But would definitely encourage you to look at your process so that you can track lead to revenue the whole way through and report on those numbers.
Actually, I got another question. As far as reporting, are there any other tools that you might recommend? I mean, just outside of tools that are built in specifically within like your Pardot or your Marketo. Are there other tools that are more helpful with that, or
Yeah, when it comes to bottom of the funnel reporting, Salesforce is really the powerhouse there. That's where everything comes together, and we can connect all those marketing dots to the ultimate dollars. In terms of other reporting platforms, to be honest, I do a lot of reporting in Excel. I mean, some of the native reporting and marketing automation platforms isn't anything to write home about.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, once you come up with a great dashboard template, it's something you can reuse over and over.
So just downloading CSVs and different lists and different things, and kind of meshing all that data together. Okay, perfect. No, it's great. So, all right, well, Andrea, thanks so much for that. There was a lot of great information out there. And so if there's anybody has any questions, how could they reach you? What's the best way?
You can find me online.
Okay.
Twitter, it's at Andrea Tarrell. I also have a blog called thespotforpardot.com.
Perfect. All right.
Post content there about weekly.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, thanks again. And hey, listen, as always, thanks for joining us on IndustrialSage. A lot of great information here. Look, if you're one of those companies that have gone ahead and made that big investment into Salesforce or a Pardot, Marketo, whatever, and you're realizing, oh my gosh, we're completely over our heads. Look, take a step back. Look, really kind of break things down. Focus in on some of these pilot programs and really get traction there. It's okay, it happens. For those of the companies that are thinking, hey, we need to make this transition, we haven't done it yet, make sure that you plan ahead of time. Make sure you talk to the right people ahead of time. Make sure you have a really good understanding of the leads that you need to be generating, really looking at those personas, looking at those verticals that you want to get in front of, looking at what success is going to look like, making sure that you have content ready to go, make sure you've got data. I know it sounds like a lot. It is a lot, but it's going to be amazing once you have that set up. And so it's going to be successful. You can make it successful. I am butchering my words, but it's okay. We're going to keep going. So as always, thanks so much for watching this episode. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're answering your questions every week. IndustrialSage.com/questions. And on social media, please share this like this. Do all the things, post content, ask us questions. If you're listening on iTunes, we'd love a review. That would be awesome. And as always, again, thanks so much for watching. I'm Danny Gonzalez, and this is IndustrialSage.